Does this work? Does this work? I think we got it. I think we got it. I think we got it. Goodness gracious. Guys, please let me know that you can hear me. If so, you guys are freaking troopers. I'll tell you what, I am some of the most technically challenged people I have ever met. And so this stuff gives me so much anxiety. Oh, Cukesy, yay. All right, here we go. Welcome everyone to the stream. I will be putting a bookmark in the description to get past all this technical difficulties. But I was checking all my sound. I'm like, okay, everything's connected, everything's plugged in, the sound is on. I did tests. Like the computer was trying to find the issue. Went back into the Elgato or the stream thing, and it had some reason disconnected its audio from the computer's audio, even though it was still playing the computer audio and not me. Anyways, you don't need to know all that stuff. I'm just glad you're here. So welcome to the Cleric Corner. My name is Riker. Here we talk about all things D&D, tapping into our higher powers to create worlds more unique and stories more impactful. So here we got Rich Mary, hello my friend, Speth Beta, Cukesy, we have DP, hello, Dreaming KW. We have a full house tonight, this morning. Everything's night if you sleep all the time. Thanks for your understanding, guys. Today we're going to talk about the Bard, and I appreciated the chat. There was the silence spell cast on me, and you know, for spellcasters that is the worst thing to happen, especially for a Bard, as I think all of their spells are verbal. I think every single one of them is verbal. If there's a couple, there's very, very few. But anyways, let's talk about the Bard. Okay, let's talk about the Bard on today's live stream. But first, let's give a shout out to my Patreon members. My highest tier, my Acolytes, Kaleidoscope, and Weaver Atchbros. Thank you so much for your support. You make all of these things happen and really give me inspiration every single day to keep making great content. In a couple weeks, I am launching a website that I will be putting a lot of new content on, and you guys have helped make that happen. So if anybody else wants to support me on Patreon and help make bigger and better content for you guys, just follow the link in the description. So it's 5 p.m. over in the, hey, so for Rich Mary, it's nighttime. So we're just, I knew. This game Wiz says everything's day when you have insomnia. You know what? You're right. I have what's the opposite of insomnia? Like, cause I'm sleeping all the time. I read a lot. I try to read a lot, but my body hates it. I love it. My body hates it, but I'll start reading something. Like I was reading Mistborn at the park yesterday. I'm like, I had a few hours to kill. I'm like, oh, let's go out to the park. Let's read, you know, lay out a blanket, relax. It was a nice day. And I must have fallen asleep like 3 separate times at the park, which probably isn't the smartest thing to do in Vegas, but hey, here we are. Yeah, Bardic inspiration is verbal. So yeah, there you go. You know. Let's go to the tier list today. So today we're going to look at the Bard, and specifically what the flavor is about the Bard. How flavorful it is, how we can take it and make something else, or how close it is to the Ludo-narrative, which is the feeling that we want to feel when we play a Bard, right? So S tier, top tier, features our complete synergy with the class narrative, a key class for flavoring, including multiple avenues for customization. And then D, the farthest that we can go down, features seldom work with the narrative of the class. They are limiting and leaves little room for reflavoring. The things that we're looking for. Do the mechanics work with the narrative? Do they match up? Does it feel like a Bard when you play it? Can you separate the mechanics from the narrative? Can you go separate from what the narrative is trying to force you into? Can you easily make changes to the mechanics? Are your abilities unique to the class? And how different would 2 characters of the same subclass be if we take 2, even if in the same party, if you have 2 of the same subclass, same bards, how different can they be? And then does the class give further options for customization? So with those things in mind, let's take a look at it. We do have a lot of people in chats, so if you do have a specific question, type in a capital, like all caps question before the question, so that way I can pick it out of the chat, and then that way I can get to your question. But I'm glad that we have so many people here today. And the questions can be anything. Doesn't really need to be about Bard, because generally these videos are Q&As as well, as we kind of chill out and look at what the Bard can offer. So let's look at the Bard, shall we? Let's get into it, since I spent the first 10 minutes of this stream spending it on trying to figure out the audio. Give it a year and I will be a master at this stuff, okay? So, bards, music and magic in the worlds of D&D. Words and music are not just vibrations of air, but vocalizations with power all their own. The bard is a master of song, speech, and magic they contain. Bards say that the multiverse was spoken into existence, that the words of the gods gave it shape, and that echoes of these primordial words of creation still resound through the cosmos. There it is, folks. Gods are bards. That's canon. Gods are bards. The music of the bards is an attempt to snatch and harness those echoes subtly woven into their spells and powers. The greatest strength of a bard is their sheer versatility. Many bards refer to, let's see how really versatile they are. Many bards prefer to stick to the guidelines in combat, using their magic to inspire their allies and hinder their foes from a distance. But bards are capable of defending themselves in melee if necessary, using their magic to bolster their sword and armor. Their spells lean towards charms and illusions rather than blatant destructive spells. They have a wide-ranging knowledge of many suspects and natural aptitude that lets them do almost anything well. Bards have become masters of their talents. They set their minds to performing, from musical performance to esoteric knowledge. Yes, exactly, DP, like that. So question like this. Bingo. Mistborn. Mistborn I've never had time to read, and I'm finally sitting down and reading it, and I'm so happy because I've heard so many good things. And yeah, I really like their magic system. It's really evocative. So anyways, with the bard going into this, I'm gonna tell you what I think of the bard first off, and then we're kind of get to explore. In a previous live stream, the bard to me was my least favorite class, not because of flavor, but because simply the spell lists were all basically debuff spells where the opponent rolls their dice in order to fail or succeed from my spells, and I don't like it when they're in control. That says a lot more about me than it does the bard, but I don't like when I'm not in charge of that role, and that's why I do prefer a lot of the attack spells or evocations or the things that I roll to hit instead of they roll to miss, essentially. Because, oh man, my last time playing a bard, I could not hit anything, and I think it was just a bad experience with there. But that aside, that's the reason bard is my least favorite class to play. However, the bard is very flavorful in general. Does it fit the feeling of a bard? When you play this bard class, you go into it and thinking, oh yeah, this feels just like I'm a bard from like TV shows or things like that. And personally, my experience, I would say no. We'll look at it and see. I would say no right off the cuff, because I know that the bard in a lot of theater, a lot of industry or film industries, a lot of TV shows, they don't have magic at all. Mainly it's just the inspiration mechanic, really. They play their songs, they inspire. I would say even Sam from the Lord of the Rings was very bardic, because his words would inspire Frodo to get to Mount Mordor, but not necessarily any spell-like things. And I know it's Dungeons and Dragons, so you kind of have to have stuff like that. But with this bard specifically, I think that this class, as made in D&D, is more just the better illusionist wizard, if that makes sense. The better illusionist, or what's the other spell list? Hold on. Enchantment. So a better illusion or enchantment wizard. So yeah, so let's look at it. DP says, I think the elephant in the room is music. Thematically, everything is centered around enchantment or sonic themes. Yeah, that is most locked in flavor component of major casting class. Yeah. And then Rich Mary, Bard's flexibility make them indispensable. Mechanically, they don't use music enough. Sometimes sometimes feels like a rogue with magic. Yeah, it does, actually. You're correct. A lot of cases it does. To me, it does. It feels like a rogue with magic because... And we can jump to this ability, Jack of all trades. You add half proficiency bonus rounded down to any ability check that you don't, or that doesn't make you already, that doesn't already have your proficiency bonus. And then it also gets expertise. So Jack of all trades here, and then expertise right here where you get proficiency doubled. So they are very much a skill master as well, right? So in a lot of ways you can reflavor or make this person a lot of different things mechanically when it comes to skills, maybe not the class bard itself, but if you want a skill-based character, rogues and bards are the best ones to go, right? Says Vidge GameWiz, I've heard a lot of people suggest turning bard into a preparation spellcaster, which would really make them flexible. Yeah. And we'll get to this, but I don't want to go into it quite yet. But bards do have some great flexibility when it comes to spell casting or spells. So, but one thing I want to put in perspective first is their main class ability, right? So it's their bardic inspiration. This is what makes a bard, right? This is what makes a bard. And you become a bard, you expect this to happen, right? Bardic inspiration. You can inspire others through your stirring words or music. To do so, you use a bonus action on your turn to choose one creature other than yourself within 60 feet of you who can hear you. That creature gains one bardic inspiration die of a d6. And that grows when you go later in levels. Once within the next 10 minutes, the creature can roll the die and add the number rolled to one ability check, one attack roll, or saving throw that it makes. The creature can wait until after it rolls the d20 before deciding to use the Bardic Inspiration die, but must decide before the DM before the DM says whether the roll will succeed or fails. Once the Bardic Inspiration die is rolled, it is lost. A creature can have only one Bardic Inspiration die at a time. You can use this feature a number of times equal to Charisma modifier. You regain any expended uses after you finish a long rest. Now, is Bardic Inspiration flavorful? Yes, for the Ludo-narrative. Can you change it to be something else? Does it offer a lot of options? Does it offer customizability? No. I don't think it does, at least in comparison to all of the other classes, right? Because if we look at, let's say the Druid. We looked at the Druid last week. Their main thing was the Wild Shape. And the Wild Shape lets you be any creature, any beast, essentially. So you not only get this feature, but you get to customize it, right? To reflavor and to be something else in a lot of ways, right? We'll put it that way. A lot of different ways that you can mix and match different creatures with your character and make something unique, right? Let's look at the Sorcerer. The Sorcerer we can look at, and they have the same thing. So what happens to the Sorcerer? Their main spellcasting, or their main feature, metamagic. They have multiple things where you can customize: distance spell, empowered spell, expanded spell, heightened spell, quicken spell. So even the base class of Sorcerer is customizable, right? So each base class Sorcerer looks a little bit different from another. I don't say that this was quite as flavorable as the Druid, but there is a lot of options here. Let's go to the Warlock, and I'm sure you know where this is going. The Warlock, you go to their main features, which is Eldritch Invocations, and they have a plethora of different things that you can mix and match and plug into your character to reflavor, make it different, so that no two Warlocks are the same. Now, however, going back to the Bard. Bardic Inspiration, every class or every Bard has this. It doesn't change. It does change in the subclasses, but so does something like the Druid and the Warlock, right? Where you the Druid with all of, for example, because I think they're the best example, with all of their subclasses, they get extra uses of their wild shape. So they get customizability and extra features, where bards really get one way of using bardic inspiration and then a second way depending on the college that you choose, right? So I mean, so let's look at some examples. College of Eloquence, and this is, and it sounds like I'm bashing on the bard. I'm not. I'm just kind of putting things into a flavor perspective. Mechanically, bards are some of the best. So with this one, College of Eloquence, you get to use it differently by saying, unfailing inspiration. When a creature adds one of your bardic inspiration die to its ability check, attack roll, or saving throw, and the roll fails, you get to keep the bardic inspiration die instead of losing it. Pretty cool. College of Creation. Oh, we missed that one. Mote of Potential. So you get to use this as like a little mote that flies around you, and you can use it on, let's see, ability checks. Creature can roll bardic inspiration die again and choose which roll to use. So you basically get to roll it with advantage. Attack rolls, you can use it on damage, I believe that this is. Target each creature of your choice you can see within 5 feet of it must make a Constitution save or take thunder. Okay, so extra thunder damage. And then saving, it's not thunder because of sound. That makes sense. And then saving throw immediately after the creature rolls a bardic inspiration die and adds it to a saving throw. The mote vanishes in the sound of soft music, causing the creature to gain temporary hit points. Also really cool. So there's different uses that you can do it within the different subclasses. So you'd obviously have to choose which subclass it is. And then College of Swords is another one. Use it for different flourishes, different sword tactics. Use it to increase your AC. You can use it to use extra damage. And then you can push the target up to 5 feet away. So does that make the bard just a little bit less flavorful because you can't do a lot with their main feature as you could with like a lot of the other things? So that's the main feature, right? We'll get to look at another thing in a second. I see question in the chat, but I don't see anything following it. So I'm guessing they're keep type. They're gonna put that in a second. So I actually do want to know if you guys feel the same way about the bard. Do you feel like the bard should be less magical? The way that I kind of mentioned at the beginning. Because currently, that's where the flavor is, right? The flavor in the bard is their spell slots, or their spells, because you get to choose different spells depending on the type of music that you have, whether you're more oral, with your voice, whether it be singing or whether it be just speaking, soothing, intimidating. You're just really good with your words in whatever form that is. I would even say that it'd be cool to have like a shy bard, right? A bard that it is just intimidation, or a bard that is so shy when they do say something, it does matter, right? So they're not this amazingly flamboyant person, but when they do say something, it does have magic. Oh, ooh, it could be even like almost they're like holding it in, right? They're so magical that every time they speak, something happens. So they have chosen not to speak, so that, and then only speak in specific situations. That's cool. Spev Beta question: what is your favorite class? You know already. If you're here, you know, the cleric. I do love the cleric, and we haven't looked at the cleric's flavoring. And spoiler alert, I don't think it's the best, but I do think it's good. But we'll get to that in another video. What we will look at the bard is one of their features that gives it a saving grace as far as spell casting goes. So if a bard does have magic, right? And we think that that's a good idea, and we think that like that's what we should have, is a bard with magic, because we have to, or whatever the reason is. Where do they get that customizability? And that's in Magical Secrets. We have a statement that works. I don't think bards should be primary casters. Okay, yeah, so you share that feeling, and should have more influence type abilities. A half or third caster would be better if those unique abilities were beefed up a bit more. I think I would agree. Vigimez says, continue. I've seen people flavor magic less bards, but it loops back to the music issue and then having to just use a component pouch. Yeah, I've used very flamboyant or very charismatic characters in other classes. I really have, because you don't need to play a bard in order to be charismatic, right? And you don't need to play a bard in order to play an instrument, right? A lot of classes, I think all classes, give you the option to choose an instrument, or as far, at least in your background, you choose an instrument to play, and it's up to you to play that. So honestly, you can flavor a bardic way of saying things, a bardic way of casting magic through other classes, where you just where you're just using an instrument and you're vocalizing to cast it, just like the bard is, right? You might even be the cleric of some music, of the music god, right? I forget what the name is, but there is a god of music. You could be a choir instructor in that case, right? Really anything you can. Oh shoot, which way should I take this? All right, we're gonna come back to magical secrets again in a minute, because I think that this is important. So let's look at bard spells, and like I told you, all of them are verbal. So we're gonna look down the list. See, verbal. Hey, we don't have a verbal. So friends would be one. So friends is a non-verbal. Because that's the one thing. Casting silent spell on a bard, like we had at the beginning of this video, it's very detrimental, right? See, verbal, minor illusion. So it looks like one enchantment, one illusion spell. Verbal, thunderclap. So they do have maybe a little bit more. True strike, that doesn't count. Thunderclap, evocation, verbal. Let's see, all of them verbal. Illusory script is another non-verbal. So if you are a bard, maybe it would be good to just get a couple of the non-verbal spell. Oh, this one's new. The kinetic jaunt, that one's a new one. That's probably good in battle. But yeah, I think a bard that uses a lot of different spells that are, how did you put it, DP? More influence type, yeah. And you could argue that debuffing and buffing is that anyways. I'm gonna read this one. Christian Roberts, them being primary casters what makes them a viable choice after Paladin or Warlock is a charisma caster. Yeah, that's absolutely what we're saying. It really sets them apart, but it also makes them a very good multi-class option. Yeah. Multi-classing isn't what this live stream is about, but bards, as we've seen, can be extremely useful. Yeah, bards make a very esoteric and very scary BBEGs. In my experience, they do. And bards as a class in D&D are extremely well done, meaning that they are a very good class to play. But yeah, with the connection to Ludo-narrative though, and what we expect to see out of the bard through other media, it is a lot more magical than maybe we would have expected, right? And technically, and I'll give this argument. If bards use their words to cast spells, right? Technically that means like all of their spells are verbal anyways. But if bards use their words to cast spells, and words themselves have magic, so that when you speak them, magic happens, technically all classes are bards. Because a lot, if not most, spells have a verbal component. So you have to speak words in order to cast spells anyways. Bards just speak maybe a little bit more of them, right? Because and I see in the chat relating bards to performers and entertainers. Yeah, they can be performer entertainers. They can be political icons. They can be people who swindle, like merchants. They're people who are very good with their words, right? And I think the bards, as far as their spells go, I'll pull my face up for a second while I chat about this. The bard. Oh, see, and I lost my train of thought. That's what happens when I try to do two things at once. Kristen Roberts, I did not say the few things that I just did. I didn't. So as far as bards go, they can be. Yeah, I'm gonna see if that thought pops back in, but we're gonna go back to magical secrets. Okay. So let's go back there. You saw my face for a second. Magical secrets. You have plundered magical knowledge from a wide spectrum of disciplines. These two spells from any class, you choose two spells from any classes, including this one. A spell you choose must be of a level that you can cast as shown on the bard table or a cantrip. So, bard gives you the ability to learn spells from any other classes, right? And so this gives the bard a unique ability because none other classes can really do this. You might have like a knowledge cleric that can dip into the wizard pool of spells, or the divine, I think it's the divine soul sorcerer who taps into the cleric spell list, but the bard specifically can tap into any spell list ever. They don't get this until level 10, so you're gonna be the first 10 levels without maybe the reflavoring that you really want. And unless I think you're lore, I think lore gets it a little bit early. Does it? Yeah, it's 6th level. So at 6th level, you get a little bit early with lore. And I think that's why a lot of people choose lore, is because you can choose 2 specific spells from another class early on to flavor your class. But as far as the main class, it's not until you get it 10th, you get it at 14th, and you get it 18th. So you can slowly build who your bard is eventually becoming, right? So is that too late to start reflaving your class? A lot of people and a lot of classes, or a lot of, hold on, let me figure out my words for a second. A lot of campaigns don't usually reach that high of a level, right? They usually stay within the 1 to 10 range. A lot of modules tend to stay in the 1 to 10 range. So if you're ever playing a module, you're really not ever going to get to magical secrets, so you don't get to customize it in those ways, unfortunately. It's a great thing. I'm happy that bards have it. I think bards need it. I think it makes them evocative. I think it makes them really flavorful. I think it makes them really cool, because when I played a bard, that was honestly the coolest thing. I was the coolest thing. I was a bard, and I was like a storyteller bard. So a lot of my magic was like pulling from stories of old, and I got to use like Tensor's transformation in order to like transform into one of the heroes of the past, which was so cool. And if I wasn't a bard of high levels, I wouldn't be able to do that, right? But that's the thing, is I had to be a bard of high level. And I think it was only when I had another character exit, she had to leave in the campaign, and I had to pull in another character. And obviously I put them at the level that the party was at. And I think the party was already at level 14. And so I pulled the magical secrets from 10 and 14 to flavor it already, right? So, yeah, let's read some comments. This might sound silly. Oh, Christian Roberts, that would be a nice take, DP, just have them be an inspiring presence. Yeah, inspiring presence, that's all a bard is. Like, ground level, strip the description, strip the lore, strip the connotations, and just leave the denotations. The bard is just an inspiring force, or a distracting force, inspiring or distracting. for inspiring for your players and distracting for the opponent. Any way that you flavor and put the toppings on top of that, because that's just the pasta. Yep, we're going with it. That's just the wheat noodles of the Bard, and anything that you put on top of that. Currently, it's meatballs and marinara with the Bard, but if you wanted to make it something else, you take the meatball and marinara, never put it on there. Maybe you want some like garlic Alfredo, right? Or a shrimp carbonara, you don't know. James 8-bit, hello, welcome. I love Hexblade 2 Bard 3 for flavor versatility. Yeah, Arcane Cleric, Theologian Wizard. I think you had this concept before, but a Cleric Bard, they could be a clergyman or a party healer. Yes, absolutely. Falstar, I've made a Bard whose art was LARPing as another class. No way. That's awesome. Yeah, you could totally LARP a Bard. If you wanted to LARP a fighter, I don't know, be Swords or Valor. I want Falstar, put in the comments what you LARPed what the other class you LARPed was. But yeah, so let's take your James 8-bit. You multi-classed your Bard into a Hexblade, and if you do multi-class into a Bard, let's say you just take a couple levels, right? First, second, you get spellcasting and Bardic Inspiration, as well as second with Jack of all trades and Song of Rest. Oh, really good dip, right? Because you get Bardic Inspiration, you get to inspire your players. You get Jack of all trades, which makes all your proficiency bonuses go up. Or not proficiency, anything that you don't have proficiency bonus, it goes up. And then Song of Rest, which is kind of maybe just a cherry on top. A lot of people don't like it. But you gain an extra d6 hit points when you make a long rest. Interesting, Falstar, a druid. So you LARPed as a druid. Did your Bard have polymorph? Because that would be really cool. That would be really cool. I know that was one of the spells that. Wait, is polymorph a polymorph? Isn't a Bard spell? Polymorph, is it? We're gonna be sure. Polymorph is not. It is a Bard spell. Okay. I was gonna say that, like, I thought like Scanlan from Critical Role chose this as one of his magical secrets, but I think it was true polymorph. I could be wrong. But anyways, so Bardic Inspiration is the main feature, and then we have, which is at this point, oh my gosh, I keep pressing the wrong button, which at this point, I think is less of a flavoring and customizable option, but they do have the magical secrets. However, it's later down the road. So really, you're just looking at as far as customizability, the actual Bard subclasses that you do or that you choose, and then the magical secrets down the line, or the actual spells that a Bard gets, right? So let's look at. I'm going to do a little exercise with this for a second. I'm going to do a little exercise. Speaking of the. I like the LARPing idea, so we're gonna go with it for a second. Let's try to make the Bard other classes. Yeah. First off, DP, you could play any class as a Bard if you're a musician. Yes, you can. Meaning as a profession. Yep. And a Bard class can have a number of different professions: mercenary, criminal, wizard, holy person. Yeah. You know, it might be interesting to have that line of subclasses instead of the ones that we have. I think we have like the Eloquence Bard, which is more of the political figure, right? We have this College of Swords, which is more of the, it's more of like the like street performer, but you can make it like a mercenary kind of thing with the swords. Wizard would probably be more of your lore, right? With you can actually dip into the wizard spell list with their additional magical secrets. As far as a holy person, which one would you choose? If you were to LARP a Bard as a holy person, maybe College of Creation, maybe, because you get to awaken creatures or awaken items, and that's kind of pulling from the gods, right? It's the words of the gods that created the realm that you're in. So you siphon the creative, or you use the same creative power that the bards used, or the gods. Again, gods are bards, but the gods used. And so in that way, you could be more clerical. That'd be one way you could do it. College of Glamour, that's more your Feywild. So you more of you're getting your presence and your charisma from the magic of the Fey. If you wanted to be a barbarian, you could be swords, I guess. Warlock. I would say between two. So College of Whispers has kind of like psychic blades, so maybe like a Great Old One kind of flavor, where you're shooting out these daggers of psychic blades to your enemies. Or maybe like a Shadow Realm or Shadowfell kind of thing. What about spirits? Spirits could be kind of, because this is based off of like a Ouija board, right? Where a bard kind of takes the witch aesthetic to pull legends and stories from the spirits of the dead. I use this one just as like a storybook character, so a lot more like children's stories or hero stories. But this one you can take tales or the dead or spirits from your actual patron. Possibly. Druidic Lore Master would work. A Druidic Lord Master would work. And then, oh yeah, so I guess Falster, I used Lore Bard with magical secrets, made it to the famous spell. Yeah, made access to the famous spells possible. Yeah. If you did want to be a druid, with a bard, you would need probably a class or a subclass that does allow you to dip into the druid spell list, because it is more nature based, right? And the bard spells are not. Mostly it's illusions, divinations, enchantments, yeah, with a few evocations. But yeah, calm emotions, enthrall, gift of gab, knock, lesser restoration, skywrite, zone of truth, clairvoyance. Not very many of elemental spells at all. So the magical secrets is almost their saving grace. Again, so I think, honestly, I think that's really it when it comes to the bard. I feel like the kind of what needs to be said is said. So in the chat, if you have other things, like other ways that you can flavor the bard, if you have other ways to customize the bard that I'm forgetting, let me know. Because I'm leaning towards like a lower, like a mid-lower rating for the bard as far as flavor goes, because it is very specific, right? As far as the spellcasters that use their words, it nails that trope. It nails that archetype. That is very, it's very Ludo-narrative when it comes to that. Is it Ludo-narrative to the bard that we see in media? Not really. And yes, you can reflavor the spells to look differently, but that's the same as every other class or every other spellcaster, right? The bards and the wizards and the clerics and the druids all can cast spells to reflavor their casting and reflavor themselves. Which class does it better? I wouldn't pick the bard from levels 1 to 10. They do have a very specific spell list, a very specific direction for those spells, and again, the magical secrets are what expand beyond that. But as far as what the base class is, right? If we're just looking at, if we're putting the spellcasting aside, looking at the base class of the druid, the base class of the sorcerer, the base class of the wizard, base class of the warlock, without the spells, which allows most customizability, right? Because all other classes really have, or all spellcasting classes have the spellcasting ability. When we look at melee people, I imagine that the melee classes might need to have a lot of other things that we need to look at besides spellcasting to kind of be in the bar of spellcasters. And I'll get to that a lot in the melee classes when we kind of look at them. But I do think that spellcasters, as of now, are more flavorable in general. Yeah. They are more customizable because of their spells, right? So in that case, absolutely. Bards are more flavorful just because of their spell casting. So in that sense, yeah. I mean, maybe we should keep them up high. So you're right. I think you're right. Falsard, professional diplomat. Yep. Vids Game Wiz feels like it could fit a similar idea as a shaman idea that you've mentioned, seeing as they seem like important historical storytellers. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's flavoring. So taking like as much druid as you can and put it into a bard. Yeah, that feels like a shaman to me. Totally do that. DP 3rd edition D&D continued its change from druidic lore master in 1st edition into jack of all trades. Interesting. Bardic magic became like the sorcerer arcane with no spell book and their own spell list. Yeah. So, and it's in the future, do I think bards will change? I don't know. I really don't. The only change that we're looking forward to, of course, is the new D&D, the 5.5, the book coming out with all of the updates in 2024 with Dungeons and Dragons. So we get to look at maybe if they change things down the road. So, Christian Roberts, I mean the Swords Bard is the second best Gish after Bladesinger. They beat out the Hexblade in sheer amount of spell slots. That is true. That is true. It does do a lot for a Gish. Very flavorful Gish at that. The Sword Bard is, to me, is more like the charismatic Gish too. It's the flourish. It's the I want to say like Prince Caspian almost, but I don't know if that's the best example. And it does. So before I stick my foot in my mouth, if I do, that's okay. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I accept that. Again, we're just exploring what makes the bard flavorful, and if we disagree, awesome, good. It's why we're having this conversation, right? But let's look at the tier list for a second. So if we're going to rate the bard, if we're going to look at the bard and say, okay, on a scale from S, A, B, C to D, as far as what the other subclasses or the other classes that we've looked at, kind of where does it sit, right? Our only S so far is the Warlock, with multiple different avenues of customization, not only their spell slots, but also their Eldritch invocations, as well as the things that they get through their Pact boon and their spells and their subclass. So features are and they're very much in the narrative with what the feel is. Features are in complete synergy with the class narrative, a key class for reflavoring, including multiple avenues for customization. Right. Again, A, strong features that promote creativity. With the right brainstorming, a lot is possible, and we put both the sorcerer, and the druid in A. B, offers decent reflavoring options and provides good narrative, though only for specific campaigns. And we actually put the wizard in B. Because again, even though they have a lot of flavor as far as spells go, if you're playing a wizard, the feeling or the narrative that you kind of sign up for with that class is difficult to get out of. DP, how much you're allowed to change for the purposes of reflavoring? I mean, we talked about tiers of reflavoring a second, and I'll shout out this in the chat. Tell me what you think that the bard deserves. What are we ranking the class today from that list? But how much are you allowed to change for the purposes of reflavoring? It depends, right? Reflavoring comes in different tiers. The first tier is just using as is and reflavoring what's on top of it, right? Making the mechanics mean something else. So like Bardic Inspiration, let's say for example. Bardic Inspiration is just inspiring your friends. Excuse me. As is, you sing a little diddle and they feel inspired and they get a D6, right? you magically give them an inspiration. Giving the bard different flavor on top of that, so not changing anything about what it has. You say, okay, this isn't an inspiration. This is a blood die. And this bard practices blood magic. And their inspiration is a adrenaline. The blood magic bard pushes the adrenaline into your body, or makes your body push out adrenaline, giving you an extra d6 on the things that you're doing because of the adrenaline pulsing through your body, right? So that's one tier that you don't change anything, you put it on there. Second tier is the customizability, right? So taking the magical secrets, right? Something that it has, and making it different within the realm of customization. So, and what this gives you is the plethora of different spells throughout all of the lists. The third tier is homebrew, right? Third tier is homebrew, where you take abilities and say, okay, I don't like this, let's make it something else. Where you take your bardic inspiration and say, okay, instead of a d6, all of your inspiration gives people advantage instead, right? So just like a DM inspiration, if the DM was to give you an inspiration, or works in something else. Or you say like, oh, well, I want to be a druid, we're gonna switch out bardic inspiration with wild shape. I don't know. That's just an idea. Magical secrets, again, you can say, okay, I'm gonna make my own spell. And I'm going to put that in there. All my magical secrets will be not taking a spell from another class, but will be creating my own class. And then the fourth tier, just making your own class, I guess, is really creating your own subclass, right? As saying like, okay, I can't change anything right here. So if I take the bard sort, like if I wanted to make like a Gish style, and I'm like, oh man, it's good, but it's not exactly what I want. It's good, it's really good. But this for an example, like it's good, but it's not exactly what I want, and I can't seem to reflavor, and I can't seem to change the items in this subclass very easily, right? It just doesn't fit. Like if I have to change this into something else, then this doesn't work, so I have to change this into something else, then you just make an entirely new subclass, and that's it, right? That's kind of like what the tier of, in my eyes, is what the tier is. Vidge Game Wiz says, I think there are a lot of types of potential bards, but they don't feel super different or flavorful. Interesting take. Yeah. I wouldn't disagree with you. I think that there is, but to that point, I think that there is flavor in the bards that other classes don't quite have as good. I think that the bards do have things that other classes do not, and I think that that's still why a bard is a viable class, right? If the other classes had bardic things and could do bard as good as bard can do, we wouldn't have the bard, right? So the bard is still very necessary when it comes to D&D, in my opinion. But DP says, baked into the class are proficiency with 3 instruments, yeah, as are rapiers and short swords, which project a very specific flavor presentation. The spell list is entertainer flavored. Yeah, it definitely points you in that direction. Just kind of like the rogue points you in the direction of sneakiness and sleight of hand, when you absolutely don't have to. You don't have to do those. And I have a whole video on the rogue saying, okay, if you're not proficient in those things, what are you proficient in and what kind of rogue can you be? And still be viable. Reflavoring. Instead of singing, a coach can go, yep, you can totally reflavor your bard as a coach. And if you can change those elements, you can alter the flavor drastically. Yeah. So interesting. So anyways, I do see one A and I do see a couple Bs. If I would choose on my tier list, I would probably give it a B. It offers decent reflavoring options and provides good narrative, but only for specific campaigns, or their reflavoring is very specific, right? You're still tied to a lot of the Ludo-narrative, which doesn't give you a lot of reflavoring options as far as that goes. But within the realm of the bard, you do have a lot of things, right? You can be a coach, you can be a person who is, oh, why am I losing words now? A person in politics. You can be someone who's like a choir instructor. Anyways, people who are good with words in general. Now the argument is, oh, isn't all druids just different people who cast nature magic? And yeah, that's a good argument for that. But as far as customizability, I don't see as much options here as I do see in the other classes. So maybe an A-, B+, possibly if you wanted to be, what's the word? Kind, I guess. But I would probably give it a B. But again, does the mechanics work with the narrative? Yes, it does. For the narrative that it's trying to portray, absolutely. Maybe not, again, the media narrative. Can you separate mechanics from the narrative? Can you separate what, like the Bardic inspiration from the narrative? Not easily. Can you easily make changes to the mechanics? I would say not really, because even if you try to change Bardic inspiration, every subclass is tied to it almost. So you'd have to change that as well. Are the abilities unique to the class? Yes, that's a hard yes, right? Bardic inspiration and the magical, what's the word? Jesus. Magical secrets that is specific to the class. There we go. How different would two characters of the same subclass be? Honestly, exactly the same. You know, if you took two colleges of swords, they might have a few different spells, but they do the same thing with their Bardic inspiration. They do the same thing with the class and their subclass, and especially a level 10 bard, they're basically the same thing. Does the class give further options for customization? I'll let you answer that one. Notan Otaku. I play in a campaign where a new player worked with the DM to flavor their bard as a cook. Hey, yes. And then you have like people can eat their food as inspiration. Yes. Vidge Game Wiz has certainly given me some bard ideas. Hey, good. Honestly, like if we can take the bard and still give a lot of inspiring flavoring, because again, I do have a whole bard video about reflavoring the bard to different things, so you still can do it. Putting something low on this list does not make it irrelevant. It doesn't make it unusable. It just makes it not the best when it comes to reflavoring. And again, this is just a dive to see if you're ever going to like, you know, game development or like to think about these things, like to kind of look at the ins and outs and what makes flavor and where that kind of looks at when you stare at a page. This is kind of like where my mind is at. And obviously that's just one mind. So if you guys look at it and see something completely different, like that's a good thing. It's good that you disagree with me. It's good that you see it in a different way, because if you can reflavor it in something that I cannot or have not thought about it yet, that's the point of reflavoring. That's the point of what I do, or why I do what I do, is because in a community that shares ideas and shares this magic, right? That and is happily and positive about other people's ideas and they're wanting to change it, I think is a great community for D&D and a great community for the world. Yeah, I think we can agree on that. Yes. Creativity and sharing ideas and sharing stories is why we're at this point in the world today, as far as technology, as far as I want to say religion, as far as culture, as far as music. It's because ideas were taken and shared, and boundaries did not limit them. So even though I say, hey, a bard's B, don't let that limit you on taking the bard and making it something insanely creative and something your own, because I know that you can do it. Spevbeta, I always use your videos for my characters. Aw, thanks, Spevbeta. Thank you so much. Notan, bard is just kind of stuck in its role of support and particular spellcasting. That's why it's a B for me. Yeah, it's very stuck in its support. Yeah. I would agree with you. It's a support class. It's a debuffer class, right? Cleric is the buffer class. I think the druid is more control, or am I thinking of wizard? One of them's better at controlling. DP says, I had someone reflavor the bard as a chef, yeah, whose inspiration, art, entertainment would take the form of food items instead of performance. Yeah, totally. You can. I do appreciate all of you guys. Honestly, you guys you guys have all of these great ideas. You guys add so much to the chat. You guys add so much to the community. So thank you for being here this morning. Make sure, and I'm going to end the video here, but make sure to like this and subscribe to the video, or subscribe if you're not subscribed, obviously, but like the video. It helps defeat the YouTube algorithm and helps the video go around. And check out tomorrow, for I do have and I'm gonna post it just right after this. I have a video coming out all about layers. So taking a break from the kind of the player character videos that I've been making, and I had this really fun video about layers and giving them to every single character to help the narrative and impactfulness of your combats. So anyway, stay tuned for that. But again, thank you so much. In the meantime, go out there and spread the good word of D&D and make the world a better place, both on and off the table. See you in the next one.